Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Spring 2021 West Virginia Cybersecurity and Game Developers Expo. And I am Patrick Smith, and I'm here with Scott Nicholas and Bill Gardner. And we're going to be talking about cybersecurity, how to get into the field, advice we have, roads you can take. So, where do you gentlemen want to start talking about you want to talk about our trajectories? Bill, you want to talk about that, or
Sure.
what do you think?
Sounds like a plan.
So what was your trajectory coming in? I know you talked about in your last session that you did a bunch in the industry. So how did you get to those points in the industry?
Well, basically, I hung around in sort of hacker circles before I ever got into the industry. I'm a self-taught system administrator. I have degrees in political science and journalism, and sort of fell into system administration. So I learned as I went along. And then as I got toward the end of my career as a system administrator, working my way up from a one-man help desk to the director of IT for a mid-sized law firm in West Virginia, I started getting certifications. So I got the Security Plus, the INET Plus, which isn't even offered anymore, and I got the OSCP, which you can see behind me right here, the Offensive Security Certified Professional. And I hear a lot of questions about certifications. Um, and it's a mixed bag. I got these because I felt they helped me along in my career. If you really want to learn how to hack, take the OSCP or take the SANS GPIN certification. But um, I don't think certifications alone is going to get you very far in industry. You have to have, education. You have to have experience as well. And the question really becomes for students is where can they get the experience? And that's
It's
and that's
always been that way.
and that's the hard part.
I mean, in the IT industry, just in general, it's always been that catch-22 kind of thing where, employers say, well, we want 2 years of experience, and prospective, candidates say, well, how am I supposed to get 2 years of experience if you won't hire me because I don't have 2 years of experience? So
Sometimes internships can fix that problem, but not everyone can get into an internship because there's only so many seats out there and so many organizations taking internships. So that is a problem.
yeah,
That's true.
why we do that. I mean, that's why we have the internship too, is their capstone.
Scott, do you want to talk about, I mean, your weigh-in's not going to be unorthodox per se, but yours and mine are going to be a little back in my day. So if you want to talk, and then mine's going to be led into by you. So
Well, excuse me. I in a way kind of felt more like, the way Ira did it is that, he started off doing other things in IT that gave him background, same thing as Bill. I started off in hardware at the very beginning, and then it didn't take me very long. That was the late 80s, early 90s. Yes, I'm that old. And so, it didn't take me very long to see that pretty much everybody was going to be able to do hardware. And I was working at the computer store here in Huntington, and I really wanted or was very interested in getting into networking because there weren't very many people doing it yet. And I like the idea of being able to connect everything up together and, having the ability to control access to things and do all that for people. And so I went to my boss and I asked her about doing it. Did we need another network engineer? And she said, well, yeah, we can use another one, but we can't send you for training. And so we had another guy that was a Novell engineer at the time. And she said, if you want to do it, you're going to need to get his books, where they'd send him to all the Novell classes. And so he was not fond of the idea of me getting his books. And then I'm sure he was figuring I was going to poach all his customers or whatever. But I went ahead and went through those things without the classes myself, and got that. That was a 7 exam certification, which was, onerous to say the least. But, back then, to do a device driver for your network card, you actually had to compile it. And so it was just kind of crazy stuff back then. So you set your card and you did your IO and your DMA and your interrupt and stuff like that. And then you actually compiled the driver, and it would only work on the card with those settings, period, that kind of stuff. But, and so I went through the networking thing, and I did Novell Networks for a while. And then I got into Microsoft Networks, where Compaq at the time came to us, and they said that they needed somebody to support their education customers, and would we be interested in doing that? And then I would need to be, excuse me, a Microsoft systems engineer, an MCSE. And I thought, man, I don't know if I want to get into a whole nother ball of wax like that, which was 6 exams. And but anyway, I started on Windows NT, and I got my MCSE on that, and did some Microsoft Networks and stuff. And then the computer store was sold, and I left there and went to Marshall. And Dr. Hayes at the time said, I miss him, man. I love Dr. Hayes. And I remember him saying, well, tell me, can you do this thing on your own? Can you start this program and hit the ground running and get it all done? And, I was young and stupid, and I said, sure, I can do that. I've never done anything like that. But I'd already gone to Microsoft Train the Trainer training, and so I was a Microsoft certified trainer for them. And so I took off from there, and that kind of overlaps with you, Patrick, because that's how you got into it, was then you jumped in when I started teaching at Marshall. So
yeah, I would wonder, throwing out there, Scott, based on your C&E experience and your early NT 351 experience, what was because I came along with NT4 when you were doing that.
I only got halfway through 351 before 4 came out.
Oh,
so
I was going to ask you, what was the level of security practices you remember back then?
Practically nothing. I mean, really, I don't feel like Microsoft even really started thinking about security until Windows 2000.
Well, I remember Windows 2000, we moved away from the SAM database that you had.
Went to Active Directory.
Yeah, you moved from the PDCs and BDCs to Active Directory. But then also 2000 was the first version where they actually brought out their own certificate services. So, I had ingrained in my head EAP TLS. That means certificates back in those days. Like
Smart
that,
cards. Yeah.
Yeah, you drilled that into our heads. But yeah, you were out in industry, and I graduated high school in '98, and so I originally started over at Marshall in the CSD department, and I was doing it my senior year of high school. And then when I graduated in '98, the CSD went defunct. I was like, oh, okay. So I transferred over to MIS for a little while, and I was taking my economics classes and stuff, and I was like, when am I going to touch a computer? And a friend of mine was over in the community college. So actually, in my case, Bill, I didn't, by default, I was not out and about working in industry at that point. But, at my house, I had already bought myself some coax, 10 megabit cards. I had my BNC connectors, and I was going ahead and running my network so I could do Duke Nukem 3D. We could sit there and play.
Great game.
Yeah, and Blood and stuff like that. So I was playing LAN stuff there, and I was like, yeah, this sounds great. So I happened to jump in when Scott was doing these classes, and oddly enough, when I was in 8th grade, someone had said to me, one of my friend's dads, who was really, really big into, he was into ham radios, and he would actually work on barges and stuff. He's like, I'm going to send you all to Cincinnati this summer for a boot camp. And I was like, I don't want to go into the military. I didn't know what he meant by boot camp, but in 8th grade, he was talking about sending us to Novell training. And I wonder what would have happened if I was in 8th grade and got CNE certified.
You'd be
I mean,
making a lot of money in 8th grade.
yeah, it would have. Well,
There
if they'd have
weren't
taken me
that many
serious.
people doing Novell back in the day. I mean, if you knew it, you were a commodity. People needed it, and a lot of people I know. I was never a Novell administrator, but when they had to switch from Novell to Windows, really had a hard time kind of changing gears because Novell just kind of went away, especially with Windows 2000, Windows NT. But I've been around the block a few times too. I actually got into computer security in the 90s. I was a prankster hacker. We used to do things like open people's disk trays on send them things on IRC,
Uh,
all that sort of stuff. Nothing. I don't think. How long is the statute of limitations? Nothing particularly criminal, but just stuff that was, for the time, funny. We would all go to jail for the stuff that we did then if we did it now. And then when I became first time I ever really touched a computer other at home, I had a VIC 20, and then I had
yeah,
a Commodore 64 and a cassette tape drive. Was in graduate school when I worked at the Parthenon at Marshall, which had a Mac lab. So, Mac, I think we started in 6, and then we were 7.1, 7.2, probably 7.2 dot something by the time I left. And then I sort of went away from that, except at doing a home. I was a civil servant. I worked for the state of West Virginia, in a department, in one of the state departments in West Virginia. Never really touched computers except at work, but at home I was always tinkering. My dad was an amateur radio operator, so I got a license too. WD KC8 ERE. So look me up sometime on the 2-meter repeater. But all these things, it's really, and I know a lot of people like this, your hobby sort of becomes your job, and that's really the best thing to do, is do what you love.
yeah,
And so when opportunity, after the first law firm I went into, I got the job because they had a Mac system, and I was the only person that knew anything about old Mac OS 7, or we were probably OS 9 at the time, between 8 and 9. And then I was the person that brought them up to OS 10, and then they decided to become Windows. So I'm the person who cut them over from OS 10 to Windows. So that was a major paradigm shift. I still use Macs at home, and in my office here we have all Macs. But so it was always education by fire, and I'm not sure that's the best way to learn. And it's different nowadays. You can get a degree in all the stuff that I used to do. You can get a degree in it, and that's great.
yeah,
Because you're not always bumping around in the dark. We didn't have Google. I yell at my students all the time. I ask them a question. If they don't know, I'm like, Google it. That's when I worked on a help desk, that's what I did all day. I sat there and Googled questions. It's just because it's on the internet, make sure you're getting it from a good source, but you have all these resources now. You don't have to have a bookcase full of books.
yeah,
And you also can reach out and ask people. I mean, Twitter is a great way of networking. In my case, a lot of the people that I worshipped as InfoSec rock gods became my friends, and that was really cool too. But networking is a big part of it as well. Um, Facebook, I get most of my consulting work through Facebook. I don't really go on LinkedIn. It's just people I know, and they have stuff and they throw it my way. So that's where I came from, and I remember the bad old days. I was a mainframe operator for a period of time. In the early 2000s, I worked as a federal contractor. And you want to talk about coaxial and BNC connectors? They were using ancient hardware to communicate with the mainframe.
Yeah, front end controllers and stuff.
Yeah. So, and then at the time they hadn't transitioned to, we were still hand loading tapes. I remember loading reel-to-reel tapes. I'm like, is this a NASA documentary from 1920s? I mean, 1960s? So it was definitely a weird, heady time. But
Was the Whopper right around the corner over there?
Yeah,
Wanted to play thermonuclear war with you. Yeah, the Whopper.
This is the Whopper. Great movie, by the way.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, what I'm trying to say is that tinker around at home. There's things, especially at VMware now, you can't break much, and if you can always fix it. Believe me, you learn a lot by fixing things as well.
Oh yeah.
I agree. One of our commenters here, this is Tom, one of Scott and my students, said that he mentioned like Hack the Box, Try Hack Me, those places. You can do kind of their scavenger hunt, their hacking, breaking stuff.
Yep.
You go out there and actually, take advantage of that. And I completely agree. Those are good things because it affords you, if you don't have the ability to do your own virtual machines, if you don't have the ability to have your extra equipment, those are out there and you can try them and they're great fun.
Mm-hmm.
Great experiences to have.
Not going to go to jail.
True. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, I know when Ira mentioned like approaching in his terms, in his eyes, approaching cybersecurity, not from just a cybersecurity head on. I didn't have the luxury of going through a cybersecurity program back in the day, so I had to come to it from another area. I went through Scott's NT4 classes. There were 7 of those. Got my MCSE. He turned around and switched all the curriculum over to Windows 2000. I was like, come on, man. So I went through 14 straight classes. Yeah, I went through 14 straight classes to Scott, getting my MCSE on NT4 in 2000. And then I immediately hopped out in the workforce locally here. And I was working for a company doing cable modem installations. So when At Home came in, technically before that, even Century Cable was doing them. And then At Home with Adelphia came in. I was the guy that would go around to everyone's houses and put in the network adapter. So talk about a lot of break fix, because I would pray every time I'd walk in someone's house that I saw an iMac, because it already had a network adapter. It was super easy to go ahead and do that on a Mac. And I prayed to goodness that I never saw an E-machine, because I had to pull out an arc welder to even like be able to take out the expansion, slot holder there so I could put something in. I thought, am I going to need like a chisel, some sort of hammer? So I got to do a lot of that. We did a lot of website stuff. And I think like you, to some degree, it was like people would say, hey, can you do this? And I'm like, well, let me give it a try. Or let me go to Borders for a couple hours and read their books and not buy them. And then wonder why they went out of business when no one's buying books of Borders.
Exactly.
But yeah, we just, we didn't have the internet at that point. And so you were constantly picking up a book and trying to figure it out. And I definitely think that can help. That could definitely help you be more well-rounded in the aspect of when you walk into some place, how some of these technologies actually work, and it may help you get your foot in the door. But I'm actually curious to talk to you, Bill, because I have to fall on my sword and be ashamed that I have not actually seen what your all's digital forensics program looks like.
Come down.
Well, this is what I had students previously, several years ago, I think, that went through, and the best of my knowledge and memory, they ended up taking some classes where they could get some certifications on like mobile device hacking.
Mm-hmm. We still have those.
And there was a couple others, because we had a couple of students who came through one of our programs and then hopped over there. And I think, are you all now offering CompTIA certifications? Because some of them came back to get it from us.
We didn't. I've always fought putting certifications inside of our courses, mainly because there's a separation between education and training in a 4-year program that it's hard to fit in. And so John Sammons, who's our chair and our program director, teaches, we call it cyber forensics now. And Josh Brunty is the mobile guy, mobile forensics. We teach Cellbrite. So we try to keep those up to date, and they can earn certificates through those programs. I'm considering how we put the CompTIA certifications into the program now. I think it's at the point now where it would probably be easier to do. I fought for the longest time because I was never a fan of certifications. When I worked in industry, I had people who worked for me who are MCSEs, MCSAs, and I've seen people wreck the Active Directory structure because they think they know what they're doing because they have a certification, and all it is a big mess to clean up. So I'm not saying all certifications is bad, but I had to really, in my mind, come to terms with the fact, well, as a 4-year degree, certification is going to be a leg up for a student that has a degree and a certification. We do that for the forensics folks, but we don't do that for the cybersecurity folks, and we want to change that. The other thing at Marshall, we have so many different programs. We came out of integrated science and technology and became our own program in 2013, I think it was. We're across the hallway from computer science, who have their own cyber undergraduate and graduate program. So any way we can differentiate ourselves from them is a good thing, and it gives students more of it gives people more of a choice of what to do. In computer science, they're engineers. They have to take math, a lot of math, and they have to take 2 or 3 years of physics. And we're very hands-on in that we're in a college of science. Yes, you're going to have some math. Yes, you're going to have science, but we don't just talk about breaking into computers. We break into computers. Now it's in a controlled environment, but we're using Metasploit. We're using Kali Linux. I have the people who write the tools talk to us. Dave Kennedy will come talk to us. I've had Amanda Berlin talk to my classes. So they get to meet the people that write the books. Jason Street's another one. So we really think we're hands-on, sort of practitioner focused. And that's the difference. It's not that their way is bad and our way is better, or ours, it's just the way that there's a difference between the different philosophies or the different teaching philosophies, the pedagogical philosophies out there. And we still have an MIS program. So over in the College of Business, they're teaching computers from a business point of view. So it's really kind of complicated, and we do our best to try to get our students into the right, which place do they fit the best. And that's the whole goal of this, is to take a student, make sure that they're in the right program, and then from there graduate them and they get a job, which is the other part of the program. So make sure people are employable and are employed. And we've been pretty successful. Our students, we've got a lot at 3-letter agencies. We've got students, you've got a couple students at Red Canary. We've got students at Expel and all these, places that'd be great to work because they're making more money than I am. So I think we've been pretty successful with even past graduation, getting people into jobs because they have the hands-on experience with the
Yeah.
tools they're using in the field.
That's great. Well, I just know my gears were turning. I was like, oh, offline, the three of us need to get together and talk because we have a brand new cybersecurity program, and to kind of tell people about the whole setup. I've dealt with paper MCSEs before. I know Scott has as well. The great thing that happened, Scott, when he came to technically Marshall Community Technical College at the time, he was not an academic. So when he saw that someone was going to have to sit for what amounted to 7 exams, he said, well, let's make a 3-hour class for each of these exams. And I want to run 4 of them concurrently in a fall and 3 of them in the spring. And they were like, that hasn't been done before. And he's like, well, I want to do it this way. And when
it just made sense to me that way, but
well, because he's now a Cisco guy. He's doing all the higher end Cisco classes for us, and so I've taken over the Microsoft. So the Padawan now becomes the master to some degree. But I haven't changed it because it just works. The students have to sign up for 4 3-hour classes, And so Monday through Thursday, I see them for 2.5 hours, and we focus on one book at a time. And so it's way better than, going on a cruise for 5 days, supposedly to Hawaii, to learn how to be an MCSE. The student has all the time in class to actually do this stuff, do the
Right.
break fix, play with it. So that when they leave, yeah, they have a certification, but if they sat for the test, they have a certification, but they also have the knowledge of what's going on there and what they should do. So I think that's great that you all are doing that as well, putting in the hands-on aspect, because um, like you said previously, when I would talk to the administration back in the IST days, there was one networking area. Like when I went to transfer over, I got my associate's degree from MCTC in 2001. I wanted to transfer over to the College of Science.
Hmm.
They couldn't do anything with my networking classes. There was nothing to be done with that. My Security Plus, none of it. So I had to go RBA.
Right.
That was just the way I had to go. So um, I think potentially we should talk to see if there's a way that people could maybe matriculate through.
Right.
And for us, our students come through in a 2-year aspect. We typically place them here locally, and then that can go ahead and start getting them. They have to go through 180 hours for an internship. That starts
Mhm.
getting them a job under their belt and a line for their resume, so that when they do leave, it's not a weird catch-22 where they
Right.
say, "Here's an entry-level job, and we want 7 years of experience," and you're like, "Do what? How do I get any of that experience to get there?" That's a little exaggerated, but still, it's weird how they're like, "Here's the entry-level IT job. We want experience in it." Do you know what you just said? You said entry level.
Yeah. I think we were thinking about, or we actually worked on a matriculation agreement at one point about 3 years ago. It's probably time to follow back around on that and try to get it done. Now that our master's program's off the ground, it's probably a better time. It's just a matter of getting John Sammons to sit down long enough to think about it, quite frankly. But I think it can be done, and I think it'd be, I hate to use this word, synergy. It would be good for us. It'd be good for you all. It's a win-win. So I think it's something we definitely need to talk about. And
I
also,
agree.
we'd have to talk to make sure the administrations. I'm sure they'll be on board with it. Just a matter of getting
Mhm.
everyone to the table.
Yeah, we have a couple articulations now, and what I like is that I would like to be able, when our students are graduating, when they're in their jobs and they say to me, "Patrick, I'd like to continue my education." For the most part, if they want the most bang for their buck, I have to say a place like Western Governors is going to
Yeah.
take all of your credits. That they will
Yep.
take them all, and you can go ahead and go into an information assurance thing there. I'd love to be able to say, or you can just go down the street here, and
Yeah.
you can actually go into a classroom, actually see a professor, do all this wonderful break fix hack stuff, and be able to go from there.
Yeah, that would be the way I'd like to see it too. Yeah, I think it's a matter of negotiating it out and see what does match up. A lot of that's way above my pay grade, but I'm sure that we should circle back around and talk about that, as well as I'm sure there's other things we can collaborate on too. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it'd be
Sometime
it'd be great.
when we're not broadcasting it to the world, we need to sit down and
Sure.
talk about it.
Well, I didn't start this expo. It was started back in 2016 by one of my former colleagues, Josh Joseph, and he
Oh,
started it as just the game dev expo. When he started it, he wanted to help raise awareness that in West Virginia it was possible to go out there and do game development. And so we
yeah.
worked with Brian Morgan and Matt Mundell at the time, and so
Yep.
we had an articulation there. So just last November, I started the cybersecurity aspect because I wanted to bring awareness to the cybersecurity side. So hopefully we can start to do some synergy and make it to where this can also lead to a nice pathway.
Yeah. Sounds
So,
great.
so based on, I think the question was asked of Ira, and he kind of talked about the fact that it was really hard to pin down one thing when it came to certifications or a path someone should go. You mentioned the OCSP, is that right? That certification.
OSCP.
My
If
problem
it,
is I get that confused
it's
with
fine.
the online responder. in certificate services. I think it's called OCSP, the protocol you use. So
Mm-hmm.
acronyms,
all good.
acronyms.
The OSCP is offered by Offensive Security, the makers of Kali Linux. And it's a very hands-on, intensive. It took me a year to study for it. I failed it the first time I took it because it's an actual hacking exercise. And basically, I'm old and I can't stay up all night, which I needed to do. I took it the second time, passed it, but there was stuff on there that I never expected. I mean, you have to write an exploit. You can use Metasploit once. Usually, you use it to to start a listener. That's about all you can do with Metasploit, and the rest of it is hands-on hack. I had to write an egg dropper to find space and memory to drop this freaking exploit, and that's really, to me, now I don't know if it's gotten easier or better. I know they've cracked way down. Like now, when you take it, you have to have a camera on you at all times so they can proctor the test. But I don't know how anyone would ever cheat at it. It's so hands-on, and it's different for everybody who takes it. But it's a good certification. My whole thing about certifications is that it proves you can take a test. The CISSP, I know people who have taken it without studying. I know people who've taken it drunk. I'm not saying you should do that, but I know people who've done it. Not everyone can do that, and they passed. These are people who are semi-famous in the information security community. I don't ever really need a CISSP, so I'll probably never take it. But my students will come up to me and go, well, how can I take the CISSP? And I'm like, you don't have enough experience in each one of the domains to even set for the OSSCP. I mean, you can look at some of the alternatives, but I don't personally, as an educator, I have to be kind of academic and snooty sometimes. That certifications is going to get you where you want to be. I think that they can be icing on top of the cake, depending on what you want to do. If you want to go into management, get a CISSP. If you want to be a network administrator, get the Microsoft certifications. You still need them, but in college, I'm not sure that you should be doing a lot of certification tests. And the other thing, if you look at certification tests, at least in cybersecurity, the CEH has questions on them that are wrong. The Security Plus have questions on that test that are really hazy or incorrect, and I'm not a fan of either one of their curriculums. And I've taught Security Plus boot camps. And one of the reasons I've never decided to put it in my curriculum is that I don't want to water down the curriculum. But we still need to figure out a way to get them the knowledge so that they can set for the exams if they want to. We also have to wrestle with NICE, the national, what is it? The framework for cybersecurity education. So that's supposed to be the standard. That's the gold standard according to NIST. So we're wrestling with all these things together, and a lot of them don't match up. So it's a process to get there, but I think it's a process that we're moving toward it. I know a lot of my students now have interest in getting certifications beyond me recommending a book to them. So why not figure out a way of doing it?
I think what we found is, like, originally when I took Scott's MCSE classes, which RIP MCSA now, unfortunately. The great thing that I found about it was there was people in the class that didn't go for the certifications because he taught the curriculum at the time. It was the mock curriculum, which would have been like the Microsoft official courseware an MCT would have to teach. And so there was a ton of skills I was having to learn there. Like all the exam objectives were being covered. So I could have left his classes, not got certification, and still worked in industry.
Well, that's my kind of hope with my students is they got the knowledge. If they want to set for these certification exam, they should have enough knowledge to do that without me teaching to the books.
Sure. Well, because that kind of worked out for us. What happened a lot of times, though, is we had students who wanted to get the certification, and they would say, well, I don't have the money right now to go and set for it. And
Right.
then by the time they did, they would say, well, I'm rusty. So we started building those into lab fees so that they had
Yeah.
it when they needed it.
I think that's excellent. That's excellent.
But for myself, I will say, I teach what I'm teaching to think about what a network admin or a security person is going to need out there. And so the nice thing for us, at least, going ahead and having the Security Plus in there, from where it's mainly myself and Scott Nicholas doing these classes, we can say, okay, we're going to talk now about log management, for example. So how in this class we were talking about how you can turn on circular logging and about how if you do that, you're going to lose all your forensic data, all the footprints where someone's been. It becomes a nice cohesive tie together. So even though we're reinforcing it, they're like, holy crap, that stuff was actually going to come back up again. I'm going to need that in my day-to-day. So it's useful there, even if they don't go sit for it. Like the Security Plus class, we do not build in that certification because, my goodness, I was hoping when they stopped making them be lifetime, they get a little bit cheaper. And they did
they're
not.
And I've got the lifetime certificate, so the CP's lifetime too. And I try to instill in my students, unless you need these certifications, don't get them because they're going to cost you a lot of time, money moving forward to keep them up to date. Because CISSP, you have to, even CEH, the security, even the CompTIA now requires you either take the test again or you do continuing education credits. So, be careful, what you're getting yourself into. And, when I hire, because I do project management, when I hire pen testers, or if I work with pen testers, I would say that 90% of them don't have any sort of certification. Some have degrees. In some cases, that's where I find talent as former students. But we get a lot of people who are ex-military, or they have experience in the field, but they may or may not have a certification. It's not one of the things that I automatically look for.
Fair enough.
I always tell people that I'm trying to teach you the skills so that if you ever came to me for a job, I'd hire you.
Right. And I completely agree with that. I always use the kind of self-deprecating thing to tell my students, though, that at least in our 2-year program, if you get the certification, somebody in industry is going to recognize that, probably, assuming Microsoft doesn't call it an MCITP for a while and then go back to an MCSE. But they may have no clue who Mount West is, or they may go network administration. Like, what did that entail? And then when they can see you've got a network plus, you've got a CCNA and routing and switching, they don't have to ask as many questions. Now, you're going to get fired in 2 weeks if you're a paper CCNA or paper MCSE because you're going to bite off more than you can chew. But in theory, the certification should tell industry more than what industry looks at that particular degree sometimes and can glean from it, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in the field that don't have degrees too. I think about Dave Kennedy, doesn't have a college degree. Kevin Metnick doesn't have a college degree. Ira probably does in something like astrophysics or something. I'm not sure, but there's a lot of people in the field that don't even have college degree. We're an emerging field of study. When I went looking for PhD programs, I ended up in education because I want to try to fix the cyber skills gap. Because we're graduating people from 4-year universities and 2-year programs. I mean, 2-year programs are also highly involved with NIST and some of the NIST, not NIST, nice frameworks out there and programs in order to try to get people who can actually do the job. But that's what I wanted to work on. So that's the reason I got one degree in education. I'm going to get a doctorate degree in education in sometime in 2023 if I don't give out first. So the plan is to try to address this through study, to actually instead of throwing together a bunch of requirements, which NIST has basically done, because I'm a member of those committees and I attend those meetings and they all make me want to jump off a parking garage. They're the most boring, asinine. Is this being recorded? Things that I have to go to. I mean, I'm not much. I'm the kind of person. I'm a bit no BS person. Let's cut to the chase. Let's fix the problem, and instead of reinventing the wheel and a bunch of paper manuals like this, I don't think that NIST has done a very good job of addressing the cyber skills gap or even identifying the skills gap. What is it? I mean, defining it would be the first thing. And I think hands-on programs is one of the panaceas, or one of the things that's going to fix that problem. And I don't think we have enough hands-on programs teaching cybersecurity. I think that we are the exception to the rule instead of the actual rule. And that includes you all. I'm not saying me, but
Right.
on
Right.
hands-on programs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because to some degree, the one thing I find I like about the community college, and you don't have to say anything at all if you don't want to, Bill. But
You're fine.
well, I'm just saying, based on what I'm about to say, is that as a student and then also as a professor, we can turn on a dime if need be.
Yeah.
When I'm on the curriculum committee and I haven't had a heart attack, so I've heard about how curriculum can be trying to go through faculty senate and stuff like that.
Oh well.
Because Scott was there, back in the day.
I'm on the college curriculum committee, and I did all the curriculum forms for our graduate program. And I was ready to start drinking pretty heavily. And finally, that process is now over. But you're absolutely correct. There is a lack of flexibility, or in the bigger the university, the bigger the program, the more it is to sort of stop that oncoming train and turn it on a dime. So smaller organizations are much better. First, let me say that I have had students from Mount West who are freaking brilliant, one of which I wrote a paper with. We wrote a paper about why Anonymous did what they did. She was a criminal. She ended up being a criminal justice major, but she also took all my classes. And now she's co-author of this paper we published last year. So,
Nice.
Yeah, so she's one of the smartest students I've ever encountered. So she graduated with a TJ degree, and I think she's in nursing school now.
Wow, that wasn't who I thought it was. I was thinking it was Deanna, but okay.
No.
I gotcha.
Name's Erica. I don't know if you ever had her, because I'm not sure what she studied when she was at Mount West.
Oh, okay. Well, I knew Deanna's CISSP, and I think she went through John's classes. So I think she was maybe a little bit before you there.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I think this whole thing is about getting into cybersecurity, and I think it can be a muddy area, but really, I think to some degree, what we're all preaching here is that you've got to start doing something. You've got to start doing some hands-on stuff too. Set yourself up a machine and start learning, because you're going to need experience some way, shape, or form. Doesn't matter whether you get certifications. If you don't have the experience to back it up, you're going to be found out very quickly.
Exactly.
And also, I would say, if I'm sitting here telling people that they should be at their house building a test lab and trying to fix things up, and they're like, I don't have time, then just stop.
Yeah.
Just stop, because in this field, the math and English people hate it when I say this, but if you want to not have to learn after you graduate, do math or English. Those things have been the same for 400 years.
You're absolutely correct. Yeah.
And Rob Jenkins is giving me the finger over here as he stares at me, because he's a physics and math guy. But
ouch.
Yeah, if you're in IT, everything, by the time you graduate, you're going to have to relearn everything else. So please get accustomed to having to learn this. Please get accustomed to having to hear about the new Exchange hack, the new SolarWinds hack, all that stuff. You're going to have to be in the trenches on that, always constantly learning. And if you don't find it enjoyable now, I really doubt you're going to find it enjoyable when you have to punch a clock.
Right. Exactly.
What do you think, Scott?
Now we're just all too tired now.
I had to take a breath after all that.
Yeah.
I've got Monster Energy drink. I'm good for at least another hour.
I had Monster Energy drink a minute.
Yeah, Scott used to always bring 2 liters of Diet Pepsi to class, and now he just has that giant thing that I feel like isn't like a Speedway or Super America. You bought it and they let you always refill it, and now they're cursing the day they ever said you could do that, Scott.
Well, no, it's a loyalty cup thing. So,
So that's the reason.
you can fill it up for like 99 cents or something.
That's probably the reason Ashland Oil went out of business.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, because Scott's had that loyalty cup like longer than I've been alive, probably, and they're like, there's a drain on us.
This is my second one because the other one I wore it out. It started leaking.
Wow.
Well, yeah, I think there's no time like the present. There's tons of jobs out there, and I would say, worst case, even probably based on what everyone out there has been hearing from us, nothing says you have to jump in to a cybersecurity job to get started. Get yourself a foot in the industry.
You're better off getting a degree, whether it's 2 year, 4 degree, in order to get into the industry than just trying to jump into the industry, because you're going to have some basic knowledge and you're going to have some credentials. And I think a degree is way better than a certification, because I've said before, certification means you can sit and take a test. A degree means much more, in that you've put in the time. If you're in a hands-on program, you're going to actually know what you're doing, other than oh, I read this book and I did these practice exams. But I don't want to I mean, there's a lot of people with different certifications, and I just think that certifications alone, without any underpinning of knowledge, is just not a good thing to do.
I mean, I agree with you that if I were to be handed a resume today and it said someone had their CCNA, I'm not going to have any idea of whether they just studied over the weekend and tried to sit for it. Although I will say the CCNA is much more difficult now than it used to be. But I can remember years and years and years ago going for a contract with somebody and trying to make sure we could have 2 certified CCNAs, and I didn't have my CCNA, and I was like, how hard could it be? So the weekend before, I bought LearnKey and I studied it up, and I went to take the test on Monday, and I failed it because I saw the section on ISDN, and I was like, who uses ISDN anymore? Well, apparently Cisco Questions did, because I failed that CCNA that day.
Security Plus probably has some questions on it too. But you're right, especially in a networking job. I think you really have to have those certifications, especially if it's Cisco. Now with Palo Alto and all these other devices out there, it's even more complicated. You have to figure out what the most prevalent vendor is and try to figure out what you're interested in, and follow what you want to do.
Yeah, I would say, Scott could speak to this probably more than me, but the nice thing, at least in the Cisco program, they're using Packet Tracer, which allows them to build these complex networks that even currently Cisco themselves uses to do a use case before they make an actual change to the real network.
Right.
So the great thing is subnetting's not going to be proprietary in that case. Yeah, the commands you have to run to put in there, but the students, whether they leave and they're on a Juniper network or a Palo Alto network or whatever they have to go to, they're at least going to have some agnostic skills to go along with those very specific commands they have to type into a Meraki, Cisco, Linksys, whoever they own these days, router or switch.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the OSI model is the OSI model. Unless you're using Apple Talk, and we won't even talk about the bad old days of Apple Talk.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, like you, I will just point out that I, too, am an entire Mac house. And so my students look at me very puzzling when I'm the Microsoft networking teacher and I have all Apples. And I was like, the way I see it, it's like, look at what the mechanic you're taking your car to get fixed. See what that mechanic's driving home, because he doesn't want to have to work on his car when he gets home. He's already worked on yours. So I don't have to work on my Mac when I go home, but I'll get paid to work on your Windows machine.
We have an understanding in my family that I will not work on your computer. My father and I got in the biggest fight ever, me trying to help him fix his computer. I'm like, I just can't do it. It's just hard to do it for like people, And
Right.
so now it's like I've been in academia for so long. I'm like, I don't know. You have to ask somebody that does that. I really don't do lower level stuff. People really like, hey, can you open this iPhone for me? Like, that's talk to Josh Brunty. I'm not a mobile device guy. So you're going to break into something. You want me to break into your network or your building? Physical is part of cybersecurity too. We do lock picking here too on time in my 350.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, I like the fact that you're like, go see Josh Brunny about mobile, because I've gotten to the point, and I tell students they need to get to the point of being confident to gladly say what you know and what you don't
Yeah.
know. And so if they start asking me some question about MVGRE, I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
Please go talk to Scott. That's Cisco. If you're going to do some sort of type of encapsulation, go talk to him. I am comfortable in telling you, if you've got a direct access question, you got an Active Directory question, I'm your man. But go talk to him about that, because I'll be the expert in one field and he can be the expert in another field.
Well, I think that's part of it too for students, is to know when to ask for help. And based on my experience, I know enough about everything to be dangerous. But when it came to especially networking stuff, I had a CCIE on the phone. If I had to do a router configuration change or anything like that, because it's not my forte. Stick to what you know, and there's always going to be stuff you don't know. And saying I don't know is very important too. I
Yeah.
don't know, but I'll find out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, students, I teach our internship class at Mount West. And so I have people funneling into me that are both network admin people, which are fully Microsoft virtualization and storage, and then Scott's cybersecurity people, as well as our degree. We have this mixture of the both. And I tell them when they go out there, look, when you go for the interview, if they say something you have no clue about, feel free. I know you're going to be nervous, but feel free to ask them to restate that, or say, I don't know. I said, because as a young student, one time I got a job, and I didn't say I don't know. And I just sat there and didn't know what I was doing, and just sat there and sat there. And eventually I was fired, because
Ouch.
guess what? I wasn't doing my stuff. I didn't know what to do. I was too scared to ask, and then what I was scared about asking just became true. I got fired. So I'm like, you're going to be working on clients' machines. These are customers' machines. It's okay. It's not an ego thing. Be like,
Right.
I don't know about this, or can you show me or remind me? And oh yes, I know how to do that, because it's a common courtesy, and they're not expecting you to know everything. I also tell my students that many times, at least employers around here, I think nationwide, are wanting to hire people. At least when they're interviewing you, they're maybe trying to figure out your soft skills, especially if you're going to do
Yeah.
any type of help desk, because they can send you to learn the knowledge you need. They
Yeah.
can't make you more polite or not cuss out a customer.
Right. Exactly. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I also have to have good written and verbal communication skills. So we make our students write reports, the same sort of pen test reports we would write in the field, plus do the presentations, and we have them present as if they're talking to a CISO or a C-level suite person. And they practice that over and over and over again. So hopefully by the time they graduate, they could do that without much help from other people. But, as I tell them, everyone's different, because I want you to write a report in a certain way. You may find somebody else that doesn't like that way, and you have to adjust to whatever the corporate culture is.
That's true, and that's great. I know probably 8 or so years ago, our people were saying, "Look, you're sending us people, and they're having to use a ticket system, and they never typed anything in there." So we
Right.
quickly adapted and put in classes where they had to put, during their hands-on labs, reflection papers that explain what they did. This didn't work. I went out and found this link, put it in there, so that we could try to incorporate it in. So I think that's great that you're doing that type of thing as well, trying to close the loop so that when they get out there, they can get hired and stay hired.
Great.
So,
Yeah.
Well, fantastic, sir. I think lastly, since I will be putting this up, let's just kind of go around the room and let people know our contact information. So in case they want to get a hold of us, they got more questions about our program. So Bill, I'll let you go ahead and start there.
Okay, so if you have questions for me or our program at Marshall, Cyber Forensics and Security, my name is, of course, Bill Gardner. You can reach me at gardner62 at marshall.edu. I'm on Twitter as Oncee, Oncee. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Snapchat. I'm on Instagram. So however you want to reach out, just reach out. And thank you all for the opportunity to do this. I've really enjoyed myself.
Well, thanks for coming. We really appreciate it. I guess I could go. I'm Scott Nicholas, and so I'm anti every kind of social media except for LinkedIn. You can get a hold of me at MCTC at Nicholas, just Nicholas, at mctc.edu. Or if you come to our website, mctc.edu, you can find myself and Patrick both there, or give us a call.
Yeah, Bill, he is like a through and through cybersecurity professor, because the second that Facebook put up, like in 2006, that like they were going to keep your photos and they could do what they wanted with them, he was like, I'm out, and he deleted his account. And look, he's laughing all the way to the bank, because he wasn't one of those 32 million people whose information was just leaked a while back. So
yeah, mine wasn't. I checked.
mine was, yeah. I went to that website where you put your phone number in. Mine wasn't. I checked too. But he's an ardent user of isn't it DuckDuckGo and Start Page, Scott? You love all those.
Yeah, sure is.
He doesn't want to give Google anything either. So
you are the product,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and I am Patrick Smith. My email address is smith288, because there was a couple of those back in the day. Smith288 at Marshall. Well, you can email him. No, you can't email Marshall. It's still working, but I'm Smith288 at mctc.edu. I'll get either one of them. I check them both. And or you can go to our website. I got a couple videos there you can watch about our program if you want. But thank you so much, Bill, for coming and talk to us. I imagine we're going to be doing some offline talking, and maybe we can start having more events like this more often.
That'd be great.
Our two institutions can get together. So thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.